They left her to die on that trail, beaten, broken, hunted by men who owned the law itself. But Eliza Rowan made one mistake they didn't count on. She survived. What started as a financial crime she uncovered became a death sentence, framing her for murder and sending killers after her blood. One rancher's choice to stop changed everything. Now, two people against an empire of corruption must walk straight into the lion's den to reclaim the truth. This is a story of courage meeting kindness on a dusty California trail, and the fire it sparked. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Edge of Death. The sun didn't care. It hammered down on the trail outside Weaverville like a blacksmith working iron, turning the dust to powder and the air to something you had to chew before breathing. July 1873 had no mercy in it. The hills shimmered with heat, and the scrub oak looked half dead even where it grew. Caleb Mercer's horse picked its way along the rutted path, head low, flanks dark with sweat. Caleb himself rode hunched forward, hat pulled low, squinting against the glare. He'd been checking fence lines on the northern boundary of Pine Hollow Ranch for 2 days now, sleeping rough, eating jerky that tasted like boot leather. His back ached. His canteen was getting light. He was thinking about the creek that ran behind his house, the cool of it, when the horse stopped. Just stopped. Caleb frowned. Come on, then. The gelding didn't move. Its ears swiveled forward, nostrils flaring. What's gotten into you? Then he saw it. At first he thought it was a bundle of rags someone had tossed from a wagon. Dark fabric, crumpled in the shade of a manzanita bush about 20 yards off the trail. Didn't make sense. Nobody threw away clothes out here. Then the bundle moved. Barely. Just a twitch, like something caught in a dream. Caleb's hand went to the rifle in his saddle scabbard without thinking. Reflex. Out here, anything unexpected could kill you. Rattlesnake, wounded animal, man with a grudge. He'd learned that young. He dismounted slow, boots hitting the ground with a soft crunch. The horse snorted but held steady. Caleb kept his hand on the rifle stock as he approached, eyes scanning the brush. No movement except that one spot. No sound but the wind pushing through dry grass. When he got close enough to see clearly, his stomach dropped. Not rags. A woman. She lay twisted on her side, one arm flung out, the other tucked against her ribs. Her dress, once blue, maybe, hard to tell under the dirt and blood, was torn at the shoulder and along the hem. Dark stains spread across the fabric. Her face was turned away, half buried in her own hair, which had come loose from whatever pins had held it, and now hung in matted tangles the color of old honey. Caleb dropped to one knee beside her, rifle forgotten. Ma'am? No response. He reached out, hesitated, then touched her shoulder. The fabric was hot from the sun, but beneath it he felt the faint rise and fall of breathing. Alive. Barely. Ma'am, can you hear me? Her head shifted slightly. A sound came from her throat. Less than a word, more than a breath. Caleb's mind raced. She'd been beaten. That much was obvious. Bruises shadowed her jaw, her cheekbone. Blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. One eye was swollen shut, and the way she lay, curled inward like she was trying to protect something. Ribs, maybe. Or worse. Who did this? He scanned the area again, harder this time. No horses. No wagon tracks fresh enough to matter. Whoever had done this was long gone. They'd left her here to die alone, and judging by the heat and the dryness of the blood, they'd done it hours ago. Maybe longer. She made that sound again, and this time her good eye cracked open. Just a sliver. Unfocused. Easy, Caleb said quietly. I'm not going to hurt you. The eye fixed on him. Widened. Terror flooded into it, sudden and sharp, and she tried to move, recoiled, gasping, one hand scrabbling weakly at the dirt like she could drag herself away. Whoa, whoa. Hey, stop. You're hurt. You'll make it worse. She didn't stop. Kept trying to crawl backward, breath coming in ragged hitches, and Caleb saw the way her face went white, the way her body betrayed her. She couldn't run, could barely move. But fear pushed her anyway. He raised both hands, palms out. I'm not one of them. Whoever they were, it wasn't me. I swear it. She stared at him. Her lips moved, shaping words that didn't come out. My name's Caleb Mercer. I've got a ranch about 8 miles south of here. I'm just passing through, checking fence. He spoke slowly, carefully, the way you'd talk to a spooked horse. You need help. I can see that. I can get you water, get you somewhere safe. But you gotta let me. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Her breathing was too fast, too shallow. Then, all at once, the fight went out of her. She sagged back against the dirt, eyes closing. Please, she whispered. The word was so faint he almost missed it. Please, don't. Don't what? Leave me. Something twisted in Caleb's chest. He'd seen plenty of hard things in 32 years. Cattle dying slow, men shot over card games, a whole family burned out by Modoc raiders back in '64. But there was something about the way she said it, like she'd already been left too many times. I won't, he said. He stood, moved quickly to his horse, pulled the canteen from the saddle. When he knelt beside her again, he slipped one arm under her shoulders, easing her up just enough to drink. She whimpered at the movement, and he felt her stiffen, but she didn't pull away. Small sips, he said. She drank. Not much. A little water ran down her chin, and she coughed, wincing hard. That's enough for now. He lowered her back down, studying her. She needed a doctor, needed one yesterday. But Weaverville was 12 miles north, and Pine Hollow was closer. He could get her to the ranch, get her stable, then ride for Doc Halstead in town, if she lived that long. I'm going to get you onto my horse, he said. It's going to hurt. I'm sorry for that. She nodded, just barely. Caleb slid one arm under her knees, the other around her back, and lifted. She wasn't heavy, too light really, but she cried out anyway, a sharp, broken sound that cut through the stillness. He froze. I know, he said quietly. I know, just hold on. He carried her to the horse, which stood patient and still, thank all that was holy. Getting her into the saddle was the worst part. She gasped and bit down on her own hand to keep from screaming, and by the time he had her settled, tears were running down her face. He swung up behind her, one arm around her waist to keep her upright. Lean back, he said. I've got you. She did. Her weight rested against his chest, and he could feel the uneven rasp of her breathing, the trembling that ran through her like a current. He turned the horse south and urged it into a walk, slow and steady. They rode in silence. The sun climbed higher. The trail stretched out, empty and indifferent. Once, she spoke. Who are you? Caleb Mercer. Told you that already? Why did you stop? He thought about that. Could have said it was the horse. Could have said he didn't know. But the truth sat simpler. Because you needed help. She didn't answer. After a while, her head drooped forward, and he thought she'd passed out. But then she spoke again, so quiet he barely heard. They'll kill you too. Caleb's jaw tightened. Who will? No answer. She'd gone limp, unconscious or close to it. He rode faster. Pine Hollow Ranch sat in a shallow valley where the land softened, sheltered by low hills on three sides and open to the south where a creek cut through. It wasn't much, just a house, a barn, a few corrals, but Caleb had built most of it himself over the past 6 years, and it was his. The house was timber and stone, single story, with a porch that caught the evening breeze. Smoke rose from the chimney even now. He'd left a fire banked before heading out. He guided the horse right up to the porch steps and dismounted carefully, then reached up to ease the woman down. She stirred, groaning, but didn't wake. He carried her inside, shouldered the door open, and laid her on his bed, the only bed in the house. The room was small, neat, a trunk at the foot of the bed, a washstand, a window with faded curtains his mother had sewn before she died. Sunlight slanted through, lighting dust motes in the air. Caleb stood there a moment looking at her. In the better light, the damage was worse than he'd thought. Bruises layered on bruises, a cut above her eyebrow that had bled into her hair. Her hands were scraped raw, like she'd tried to fight. He turned and went to the kitchen, grabbed a basin, filled it with water from the bucket by the stove, found a clean rag, brought it all back. When he started cleaning the blood from her face, she woke with a gasp, eyes snapping open, and for a second he thought she'd panic again. But then she saw him, saw the rag in his hand, and something in her expression shifted. It's just water, he said. Gonna clean you up a bit. That all right? She nodded. He worked carefully, wiping away the dirt and dried blood. She flinched when he touched the bruises, but didn't pull away. Her good eye followed his movements, wary but not terrified. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated, then, Eliza. Eliza, what? Another pause, longer this time. Rowan. All right, Eliza Rowan. You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you. You don't know that. I know they're not here. That'll do for now. He finished with her face, rinsed the rag, started on her hands. Her fingers were delicate, long, the kind that looked like they'd held pens more than plows. There were ink stains under her nails. Who did this to you? He asked. Men. I figured that much. What men? She looked away. It doesn't matter. Sure it does. No. Her voice hardened, just a fraction. It doesn't. They're too big, too powerful. You can't stop them. Maybe not, but I can get the law. The law works for them. That stopped him. He sat back, studying her. What'd you do? He asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. I found out something I wasn't supposed to know. What? A crime? A theft. Embezzlement, they call it. At the bank where I worked. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate, like she was testing him. I kept the books. I saw the numbers. They were moving money, hiding it, blaming it on clients. When I tried to report it, She trailed off, swallowed hard. They framed me instead. Said I killed someone. Put my name on a wanted poster. Caleb felt something cold settle in his gut. Did you? No. Who'd they say you killed? A clerk. A man named Thomas Collier. He was helping me gather evidence. They made it look like I shot him and ran. Her good eye met his, unflinching. I didn't. But it doesn't matter what's true. They own the sheriff. They own the judges. They own everything. He believed her. Don't ask him why. Maybe the way she said it, flat and tired, with no pleading in it. Or maybe just the fact that men with power had been doing exactly this kind of thing since the dawn of time, and he'd seen enough of the world to know it. Who are they? He asked. Victor Hale. He runs the bank, and others. Men with money. Caleb nodded slowly. So what were you doing out on that trail? Running. I got out of Sacramento 2 days ago, bought a horse, rode north, thought maybe I could disappear in the mountains. But they caught up. Her voice went flat. 3 of them. They beat me. Took everything I had. Said it was a message. That nobody crosses Victor Hale. Then they left. Left you to die. Yes. Silence filled the room. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. You should have let me, Eliza said quietly. Caleb looked at her. Should have let you what? Die. Out there. Now I've brought them to your door. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the valley. The hills rolled away in shades of gold and brown, empty except for a few head of cattle grazing near the creek. Peaceful. For now. Maybe, he said. Maybe not. Either way, I'm not turning you out. Why? He turned back to her. Because it's the right thing to do. Right doesn't matter, not against men like Hale. Maybe, but wrong sure as hell doesn't win by default just because it's easier. She stared at him. For the first time, something other than fear moved behind her eyes. Something that might have been hope, or might have just been exhaustion. You're a fool, she said. Probably. Despite everything, the corner of her mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Then it was gone, and she closed her eyes, sinking back into the pillow. Sleep, Caleb said. I'll keep watch. They'll come. Let 'em. He pulled a chair over, sat down, and rested his rifle across his knees. Outside, the sun began its slow descent toward the hills, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. And Caleb Mercer, who'd lived most of his life asking for nothing but to be left alone, made a decision that would change everything. He would not leave her behind. The first 3 days passed in a haze. Eliza slept more than she woke, her body fighting to heal itself. When she did surface, it was only long enough to drink water, eat a little broth, then slip back under. Caleb stayed close. He changed the dressing on the worst of her cuts, kept the fire going, made sure she didn't fever up. On the 4th day, she stayed awake longer. He was at the stove, frying salt pork, when he heard her stir. Turned to find her sitting up, back against the headboard, one hand pressed to her ribs. You should lie down, he said. I've been lying down for days. That's the idea. She ignored him, looking around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. Her gaze lingered on the rifle leaning in the corner, the saddle slung over a chair, the shelf of books by the window. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yep." "No wife?" "Nope." "Why not?" He shrugged, flipping the pork. "Never found one that'd have me." "I find that hard to believe." "Believe what you want." She was quiet a moment, then, "Thank you." He glanced at her. "For what?" "Not asking questions, not pushing. Figured you'd talk when you were ready." "And if I'm never ready?" "Then you won't." She studied him, and he had the uncomfortable sense of being measured against some invisible standard. Finally, she nodded, seeming satisfied. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Shoot. Why do you trust me?" Caleb turned off the stove, plated the pork, brought it over with a piece of bread, set it on the bed beside her. "I don't," he said. "Not completely. I don't know you, but I know what I saw on that trail. I know you were half dead, and I know whoever did it thought they'd finished the job. That's enough for now." Eliza picked up the bread, tore off a piece, chewed slowly. "Most people would have turned me in. Wanted poster probably has a reward." "Probably." "So?" "So I'm not most people." She almost smiled again. Didn't quite make it, but it was close. They ate in silence. When she finished, she pushed the plate aside and looked at him straight on. "They will come," she said. "Sooner or later. Hale won't let this go. He can't afford to." "Then we'll deal with it." "We?" "You got a better idea?" "I could leave, disappear, save you the trouble." "You can barely walk." "I'll manage." "No." His voice came out harder than he meant. He softened it. "No, you stay put. Heal up. Then we figure out what's next." "There is no next. Not for me. Not unless I run forever. Or unless you fight back." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Fight back with what? I've got no money, no evidence, no allies. He has everything." "You've got the truth." "The truth died with Thomas Collier." Caleb set his plate aside, leaned forward. "You said you worked the books. You saw the numbers. That means you know where the money went, how they hid it. That's evidence." "It's in my head. That's not proof." "It's a start." She shook her head, looking away. "You don't understand. These men, they're not just rich. They're connected. Judges, sheriffs, politicians. They've built a wall around themselves, and people like me don't break through walls like that. We just get crushed against them." "Maybe. But you're still breathing. That's more than they counted on." Eliza turned back to him, and for a moment he saw the full weight of what she carried. Not just fear, but anger and grief, and a kind of exhausted determination that hadn't quite died. "Why do you care?" she asked. Caleb thought about that. Could have given her a dozen answers. Because it was right. Because he hated bullies. Because his mother had raised him to help people who couldn't help themselves. But the truth was simpler. Because nobody should die alone on a trail for doing the right thing. Something broke in her expression. Not tears, she was too worn out for that, but a kind of softening, like a wall coming down brick by brick. "All right," she said quietly. "All right what?" "I'll stay. For now. But if they come, when they come, you let me go. You don't fight them, you just step aside." "Can't promise that." "Caleb, can't, so don't ask." She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed, leaning back. "You really are a fool." "So you said." This time she did smile. Small, fleeting, but real. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. A fragile thread, thin as spider silk, stretching across the space where strangers became something else. Outside, the sun sank lower, and the shadows grew long. In Sacramento, 300 miles south, Victor Hale sat in his office reviewing reports. One of them mentioned a woman's body, found or not found, status uncertain. He made a note to follow up. And on Pine Hollow Ranch, two people who'd been thrown together by chance began the slow, careful work of deciding whether to stand or run. Neither of them knew it yet, but the choice had already been made. A week passed. Eliza grew stronger. The swelling in her face went down. The bruises faded from purple to green to yellow. She started walking, First just to the porch and back, then farther, out to the corral, the barn. Caleb watched her move, stiff, careful, but steady, and said nothing. She didn't talk much. Neither did he. But they fell into a rhythm. He'd worked the ranch, mending fence, checking cattle, hauling water, and she'd stay close to the house, helping where she could. Cooking, mostly. She was better at it than him, which wasn't saying much. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, she spoke. I worked at California Mercantile Bank, she said, in Sacramento. Started as a clerk, worked my way up to bookkeeper. Took me 4 years. She paused. I was good at it. Numbers make sense. They don't lie. Caleb nodded, waiting. Victor Hale took over as president 2 years ago. Everything changed. Suddenly there were discrepancies. Money moving in ways it shouldn't. I brought it to the assistant manager, Thomas Collier. He started digging with me. We found accounts that didn't exist, loans that were never repaid, transfers to shell companies. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. Who was taking it? Hale mostly, but others too. Silent partners. Men who'd invested in the bank and were using it like their personal vault. What'd you do? Thomas wanted to go to the authorities. I said we needed more proof. We spent weeks gathering it, ledgers, receipts, correspondence. We were almost ready. Her voice went quiet. Then Thomas turned up dead, shot in an alley behind the bank. And the next day there was a wanted poster with my face on it. Murder, $500 reward. They killed him and blamed you. Yes. What happened to the evidence? I hid it. Caleb looked at her. Where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't find it. But you know where it is? Yes. Then we get it. We take it to someone who'll listen. Eliza laughed, sharp and humorless. Who? The sheriff's on Hale's payroll. The judge, too. Everyone who matters is either bought or scared. Not everyone. Name one person, Caleb thought. There's a newspaper in Sacramento, the Union. They run stories about corruption. They run stories Hale approves. What about San Francisco? Bigger city. More papers. Harder to control. She was quiet, considering. Then she shook her head. It's too far. I'd never make it. And even if I did, who'd believe me? A woman accused of murder with no proof but her word? You said you hid evidence. I did. But getting it means going back. To Sacramento? Yes. Then we go. She turned to stare at him. Are you insane? They'll kill you on sight. Maybe. Maybe not. But sitting here won't solve anything. Running won't either. I'm not talking about running. I'm talking about fighting. Eliza stood, pacing to the edge of the porch. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of sage and dry grass. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring out at the dark hills. I'm so tired, she said quietly. I know. I don't know if I can do this. You don't have to decide tonight. She turned back to him, and in the starlight he could see the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Why are you doing this? She asked. Really? You don't owe me anything. Caleb stood, walked to the railing, leaned against it. My father was a miner, he said. Spent his whole life breaking rock for other men's gold. Died when I was 15. Lung disease. Company paid my mother $20 and told her to be grateful. She wasn't. She fought them. Took it to a lawyer, tried to get compensation. They buried her in paperwork, dragged it out for 2 years, and when she finally gave up, she had nothing left. Died 6 months later. Just gave up. He paused. I swore I'd never let that happen again. Not if I could stop it. Not to anyone. Eliza didn't say anything, but when she sat back down, it was closer to him than before. They stayed like that for a long time, not talking, just sitting in the dark. And somewhere far to the south, wheels were already turning. The rider came at dawn on the 9th day. Caleb saw him from the barn, a lone figure on horseback moving slow up the valley trail. Not hurrying, not hiding, just coming. He grabbed his rifle, walked back to the house. Eliza was at the stove frying eggs. She looked up when he came in. We've got company, he said. Her face went pale. How many? 1. So far. She set down the pan, moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight. Can you see who it is? Not yet. The rider came closer. Middle-aged man, thin, wearing a dark suit and a flat-brimmed hat. No gun visible, but that didn't mean much. When he was 50 yards out, he reined in, raised one hand. "Hello, the house," he called. Caleb stepped onto the porch, rifle held loose but ready. "That's far enough?" The man stopped. "Are you Caleb Mercer?" "Who's asking?" "My name is William Tate. I'm a private investigator. I'm looking for a woman." Caleb's grip tightened on the rifle. "What woman?" "Eliza Rowan, wanted for murder in Sacramento. I have reason to believe she came this way." "That's so?" "Yes, sir. I'm authorized to offer a reward for information leading to her capture, $500. "That's a lot of money." "It is. Have you seen her?" Caleb studied the man. There was something slick about him, something that didn't sit right. He glanced back at the house. Through the window he could see Eliza's silhouette, frozen, listening. "Can't say I have," Caleb said. Tate smiled, thin and knowing. "Mr. Mercer, I'm going to be straight with you. I've been tracking Miss Rowan for over a week. I know she came north, I know she's hurt, and I know this is the only ranch for 15 miles. Now, I'm not looking for trouble. I'm just doing my job. You help me out, and that reward is yours. No questions asked." "And if I don't help you out?" The smile didn't waver. "Then I'd have to wonder why you're protecting a murderer." Caleb raised the rifle, not pointing it, just shifting it. "I'd have to wonder why you're trespassing." The smile faded. "This doesn't have to be difficult. Seems like you're the one making it difficult." For a moment they just stared at each other. Then Tate sighed, gathering his reins. "I'll be in Weaverville," he said, "at the hotel. If you change your mind, you know where to find me." He tipped his hat. "Think about it, Mr. Mercer. $500 is a lot of money to turn down for a woman you don't even know." He turned his horse and rode back the way he came, not hurrying, confident. Caleb watched until he was out of sight, then went back inside. Eliza stood in the middle of the room, shaking. "He knows," she said. "He knows I'm here." "Maybe. Maybe he's just fishing." "No, you saw him. He knows." Caleb set the rifle down. "Even if he does, he can't prove it, and he won't try anything alone." "He won't be alone for long. He'll send word to Hale. They'll come with more men." "Then we move." "Where?" "Anywhere but here." She shook her head. "Running won't work. It didn't work before. They'll just keep coming." Caleb looked at her. "What do you want to do?" Eliza was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I want to go back," she said. "To Sacramento?" "Yes. I want to get the evidence. I want to expose them. I want to end this." "That's suicide." "Probably. But it's better than running until they catch me anyway." Caleb thought about that. Thought about the rider, the wanted poster, the men with power who'd rather see a woman dead than risk their empire. Then he thought about his mother, fighting a losing battle alone. "All right," he said. "All right? We go to Sacramento. We get your evidence. We take them down." Eliza stared at him. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious." "Caleb, you'll be killed." "Maybe, but I'm not letting you go alone." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Why?" He thought about all the reasons, all the words he could use. But in the end, it came down to something simple. "Because you asked me not to leave you behind. I gave my word." For the first time since he'd found her on that trail, Eliza Rowan's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back hard, but they came anyway, silent and unstoppable. "Thank you," she whispered. Caleb nodded, and just like that, the decision was made. They would ride straight into the lion's den. They would face the men who'd tried to kill her, and win or lose, they'd do it together. They left at first light the next morning. The plan was simple. Ride hard, keep to back trails, reach Sacramento in 4 days if the weather held. Get the evidence. Get out. Caleb packed light, bedroll, rifle, ammunition, enough food for a week. Eliza wore men's clothes he'd found in his father's old trunk, her hair tied back under a hat. In the dim light, she could pass for a young man. Maybe. They didn't talk much as they saddled the horses. There wasn't much to say. They both knew what they were riding into. As they mounted up, Caleb looked back at the ranch one last time. The house sat quiet in the early morning light, smoke rising from the chimney he'd banked before leaving. He'd built a life here. Small, simple, but his. might never see it again. Ready? Eliza asked. He turned his horse south. Let's go. They rode out of the valley as the sun broke over the hills, two small figures moving through a vast and indifferent landscape, chasing a truth that might get them killed. Behind them, Pine Hollow Ranch stood empty. Ahead, Sacramento waited. And somewhere in between, in a hotel room in Weaverville, William Tate wrote a telegram to Victor Hale, informing him that the problem they thought they'd buried was very much alive and coming home. The first day passed without incident, which made Caleb more nervous than if they'd run into trouble. They kept to the hills, avoiding main roads, stopping only to water the horses and check their back trail. Eliza rode well for someone who'd been half dead 2 weeks ago, though he could see the strain in the way she held herself, the careful way she dismounted when they finally made camp that first night. They built no fire. Too risky. Just sat in the dark eating jerky and hardtack, listening to the night sounds. Coyotes in the distance. Wind through the pines, the horses shifting and blowing. Tell me about the evidence, Caleb said quietly. Eliza was silent for a moment, staring up at the stars. It's in a church, she said finally. St. Paul's Cathedral, downtown Sacramento. There's a false panel behind the organ. Thomas and I hid it there 3 days before he died. What exactly is it? Ledgers. Copies I made. Also letters between Hale and his partners, discussing the scheme, and a list of all the false accounts with the real names of who controlled them. She paused. It's enough to hang him. If anyone will look at it, we'll make them look. How? Haven't figured that part out yet. She almost laughed. Wonderful plan. You got a better one? No. They sat quiet after that. Caleb took first watch, rifle across his knees while Eliza curled up in her bedroll. He watched her sleep, or try to. She twitched and muttered, caught in dreams he could only guess at. Once she cried out, and he moved to wake her, but she settled on her own. When his watch ended, he woke her gently. She took the rifle without a word, and he lay down where she'd been. The ground was hard, and the blanket smelled like horse, but exhaustion pulled him under fast. He dreamed of his mother, standing in a courtroom that had no judge, holding papers no one would read. The second day brought rain. Not heavy, just a cold drizzle that soaked through their coats and turned the trail to mud. The horses plodded on, heads low, and Caleb and Eliza hunched in their saddles, miserable and silent. Around midday, they came to a creek swollen with runoff. Caleb studied it, judging the current. We can cross, he said, but we go slow. Eliza nodded. She looked pale, her lips pressed tight. You all right? Fine. She wasn't fine, he could see that, but he let it go. They walked the horses into the water. It came up to the stirrups, cold enough to make his feet ache. The current pulled hard and his gelding balked halfway across, tossing its head. Caleb urged it forward with his knees, and after a tense moment, it obeyed. He made the far bank, turned to check on Eliza. She was still in the middle, her horse fighting the current, and he saw her sway in the saddle. Eliza! She grabbed the saddle horn, held on, but her face had gone white as paper. The horse lunged forward, scrambling up the bank, and she slid sideways. Caleb kicked free of his stirrups and caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you. She sagged against him, breathing hard. I'm sorry. Don't be. You're doing fine. I'm slowing you down. We're not in a race. He helped her sit back against a tree while the horses shook themselves off, pulled a canteen from his saddle and handed it to her. She drank, hands shaking. I thought I was stronger, she said quietly. You are strong. You're also still healing. There's a difference. If I can't even cross a creek without falling apart, how am I supposed to face Hale? One step at a time. She looked at him and he saw the fear in her eyes. Not of Hale, of herself, of failing. What if I can't do this? She asked. Then we turn around and go home. I don't have a home. You've got Pine Hollow. That's your home. Could be yours too, if you want it. She stared at him, opened her mouth, closed it, finally looked away, blinking hard. We should keep moving, she said. Caleb nodded, helped her to her feet. They mounted up and rode on, and he didn't bring it up again. But the words hung between them, unfinished and fragile. That night they found an abandoned line shack, half collapsed but with enough roof left to keep the rain off. They unsaddled the horses, rubbed them down, picketed them under a stand of trees. Inside, the shack smelled like rot and mice, but it was dry. Caleb risked a small fire, just enough to take the chill off. They sat close to it, warming their hands. "Can I ask you something?" Eliza said. "Sure." "Why didn't you ever marry?" He poked at the fire with a stick. "Told you. Never found anyone." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." "I don't believe you." He glanced at her. "Why not?" "Because I've seen the way you are. Patient, kind. Any woman would be lucky to have you." "You don't know me that well." "I know enough." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "There was someone," he said, "long time ago. Her name was Margaret. We were engaged, planning to get married in the spring of '68. He paused. "She changed her mind." "Why?" "Said she couldn't live the way I wanted to live, out here, away from everything. She wanted a town, a real house, neighbors. I wanted land, space. So she married a store clerk in Reading, and I built Pine Hollow." "Do you regret it?" "Some days. Most days, no. I like the quiet, like being able to see the sky without buildings in the way." He looked at her. "What about you? You ever come close?" Eliza shook her head. "No, I was too busy working, too focused on making something of myself. My father thought I was foolish, said a woman's place was in the home, not in a bank. We fought about it for years. When he died, we still weren't speaking." "I'm sorry. So am I." She drew her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. "I thought if I worked hard enough, proved myself, he'd see. But he never did. And now he never will." "Maybe he saw more than you think." "Maybe. Or maybe I wasted years chasing his approval when I should have just lived my own life." She looked at Caleb. "Do you think I'm foolish, going back to Sacramento?" "No. Even if it gets us killed. Even then, some things are worth the risk." "Like what?" "Like proving you were right, like making sure the men who did this don't get away with it." He paused. "Like keeping your word to someone who can't speak for themselves anymore." She understood. Thomas Collier, the man who'd helped her and died for it. "I dream about him sometimes," she said quietly. "In the dreams I see him fall. I hear the gunshot, but I can never move fast enough to stop it. I just watch. That's not your fault." "Isn't it? If I'd never asked him to help, then Hale would have found another way. Men like that always do." "You didn't pull the trigger." "No, but I might as well have." Caleb reached over, took her hand. She didn't pull away. "Listen to me," he said. "You can carry that if you want, but it won't change anything. Thomas made his choice. He knew the risk, and he chose to help you anyway. Honor that. Don't waste it by blaming yourself." Eliza's eyes glistened in the firelight. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Make it sound so simple." "It's not simple. It's just true." She squeezed his hand, held it for a moment, then let go. But something had shifted again. Another thread, woven a little tighter. The third day dawned clear and cold. They rode hard, covering ground, and by evening they could see the haze of Sacramento in the distance. The city sprawled along the river, a mess of buildings and smoke and noise that grew louder as they approached. They camped 5 miles out, in a grove of oaks, and made their final plans. "We go in at dawn," Caleb said. "You know the city. You lead." Eliza nodded. "St. Paul's is on 8th Street. We can approach from the south through the warehouse district. Less people, less chance of being recognized. And once we have the evidence, there's a newspaper man. His name is Daniel Cross. He runs a small press called The Independent. He's been critical of the banks before. If anyone will print the story, it's him." "You trust him?" "I don't know him, but I know his reputation. That'll have to be enough." Caleb thought about that. "What if he won't help? Then we find someone else." "And if no one will?" Eliza met his eyes. "Then we tried. That's more than most people do." He nodded slowly. "All right. We get the evidence, we take it to Cross, and we see what happens. If it goes sideways, we run. No, if it goes sideways, you run. I'll cover you." "Caleb, that's the deal. You don't argue." She looked like she wanted to argue anyway, but after a moment, she just nodded. They tried to sleep, but neither of them managed much. Every sound made Caleb's hand drift to his rifle. Every shift of the wind made Eliza sit up, listening. By the time the first gray light touched the horizon, they were both awake, staring into the dying coals of their fire. "You ready?" Caleb asked. Eliza took a breath, let it out slow. "No, but let's go anyway." They saddled up and rode into Sacramento as the city woke around them. The streets were already busy, even at dawn. Wagons hauling goods, workers heading to the docks, shopkeepers opening shutters. The smell hit Caleb first: smoke, garbage, river mud, too many people in too small a space. He'd forgotten how much he hated cities. Eliza led them south, like she'd said, threading through narrow alleys between warehouses. She kept her head down, hat pulled low, and Caleb did the same. They tied the horses behind a livery stable, paid a boy 2 bits to watch them, and continued on foot. St. Paul's Cathedral rose above the surrounding buildings, its spire cutting the morning sky. It was early enough that the streets around it were mostly empty. Eliza paused at the corner, studying the approach. "The side door," she said. "It's usually unlocked." They crossed the street quickly, slipped around the side of the building. The door opened with a soft creak, and they stepped into the cool dimness inside. The cathedral was empty. Rows of pews stretched toward the altar, and morning light slanted through stained glass windows, painting colored patterns on the stone floor. The air smelled like candle wax and old wood. "This way," Eliza whispered. She led him to the front, past the altar, to where a massive pipe organ sat against the wall. Caleb kept watch while she knelt beside it, running her hands along the paneling. "It's here," she said. "Help me." He crouched beside her. She pressed on a section of wood, and it clicked. A panel swung open, revealing a hollow space behind. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a bundle of papers. Eliza pulled it out, hands shaking. Unwrapped it. Ledgers, letters, lists, everything she'd described. "It's all here," she breathed. "Good. Let's go." They were halfway back to the door when it opened. A man stepped in. Tall, well-dressed, with graying hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. Caleb knew him instantly from Eliza's description. Victor Hale. Behind him, 3 other men, armed. Eliza froze. Hale smiled. "Hello, Eliza. I was hoping you'd come back." Caleb's hand went to his gun, but one of the men already had a rifle trained on him. "I wouldn't," the man said. Hale walked forward slowly, his footsteps echoing off the stone. "You've caused me considerable trouble, my dear, running off like that, making me waste resources hunting you down." He glanced at Caleb. "And you found yourself a protector. How quaint." "Stay back," Eliza said. Her voice shook, but she held the bundle of papers tight. "Or what? You'll expose me?" Hale laughed. "With what? Papers that no one will believe came from anywhere but your own desperate imagination?" He stopped a few feet away. "You should have stayed dead, Eliza. It would have been easier for everyone." "You killed Thomas," she said. "I did no such thing. I simply hired men who understood what needed to be done, much like these gentlemen here." He gestured to the armed men. "Now, you're going to hand me those documents, and then we're going to take a little ride. You and I have some things to discuss." "No. I'm not asking." Caleb shifted, drawing Hale's attention. "And you," Hale said. "The rancher. William Tate told me about you, said you were stubborn, foolish. I can see he was right." He shook his head. "You could have taken the reward money and walked away. Instead, you chose to involve yourself in something that has nothing to do with you. Poor decision." "I've made worse," Caleb said. "Clearly." Hale nodded to his men. "Take them both. If they resist, shoot the man first. Eliza, I want alive, for now." The men moved forward. Caleb's mind raced. 3 guns. 1 pointed at him, 2 at Eliza. No cover. No way out. "Unless—" "Eliza," he said quietly. "When I move, you run. Don't stop. Don't look back." "Caleb, do it." And then he moved. He didn't go for his gun. Instead, he lunged sideways, grabbed the nearest candelabra from the altar, and hurled it at the stained glass window to his left. The crash was enormous, glass exploding outward in a shower of colored shards. The men spun toward the sound, startled, and in that instant Caleb drew his pistol and fired. Not at the men. At the chandelier hanging above Hale's head. The chain snapped. The massive iron fixture fell, and Hale dove backward with a shout. One of his men wasn't fast enough. The chandelier caught him across the shoulders, driving him to the ground. "Run!" Caleb yelled. Eliza ran. She bolted for the side door, clutching the documents, and Caleb fired 2 more shots, wild, just to keep the men's heads down, then followed. Behind them, someone was shouting. A gun went off, the bullet smacking into the doorframe as Caleb ducked through. They hit the street at a sprint. Eliza was faster than he expected, fueled by terror and adrenaline. He caught up to her as they rounded the corner, grabbed her arm. "This way!" They cut through an alley, vaulted a fence, stumbled into a market street crowded with morning shoppers. People shouted as they pushed through. Behind them, footsteps pounded. Another gunshot cracked, and a woman screamed. "Delivery!" Eliza gasped. They ran flat out, weaving through the chaos. Caleb's lungs burned, his side ached, but he didn't slow down. Couldn't. Delivery came into view. The boy they'd paid was gone, but the horses were still there. Caleb and Eliza swung into their saddles, and Caleb kicked his gelding hard. The horse surged forward, and they burst out of the stable into the street. Behind them, Hale's men rounded the corner. One raised a rifle. Caleb leaned low over his horse's neck. "Go! Go!" They galloped through the city streets, scattering pedestrians, nearly colliding with a vegetable cart. The rifle cracked again, but the shot went wide. They turned a corner, then another, and suddenly they were on the river road, heading east, the city falling away behind them. Caleb risked a glance back. No pursuit. Not yet. "Keep riding," he shouted. They rode hard for an hour, not slowing until the horses were blowing foam, and Caleb's gelding started to stumble. He reined in, and Eliza pulled up beside him, both of them gasping for breath. "Are they following?" she asked. Caleb looked back. Empty road. "Not that I can see. But they will be." Eliza clutched the bundle of documents to her chest. "We got it. We actually got it. Yeah, now what?" She thought fast. "Cross. The newspaper man. His office is on the south side. If we can reach him, they'll expect that. Hale knows who Cross is. He'll have men there." "Then where?" Caleb thought. "San Francisco. Bigger city. More newspapers. Harder for Hale to control. That's 3 days' ride. You got a better idea?" She didn't. They looked at each other, both of them knowing the odds. "All right," Eliza said. "San Francisco." They turned their horses west and rode on. Behind them, in Sacramento, Victor Hale stood in the wreckage of St. Paul's Cathedral, staring at the broken chandelier and the scorch marks from Caleb's gunshots. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold as winter. "Find them," he said to the men beside him. "I don't care what it takes. Bring me Eliza Rowan, and kill the rancher." "Yes, sir." Hale walked to the altar, picked up a shard of stained glass, studied it. Then he dropped it and walked out into the sunlight. This had gone on long enough. The first night after Sacramento, they didn't stop, just kept riding, changing direction twice to confuse anyone tracking them. By the time they finally made camp deep in a ravine miles from any road, both of them were dead on their feet. Caleb built a fire this time. They needed it. The night was cold, and they were both shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline crash. "That was insane," Eliza said. She sat close to the flames, the document still clutched in her lap. "You could have been killed." "So could you." "I mean it, Caleb. That chandelier, what if you'd missed? What if it had hit you instead of him?" "Then you would have run anyway. That was the point." She stared at him. "You're impossible." "You're welcome." Despite everything, she laughed. A short, breathless sound, but real. Then the laughter turned into something else, and she covered her face with her hands. "Hey," Caleb said. "Hey, we're all right. We made it." "For how long?" "He'll send men after us. He'll never stop." "Probably not. But we've got what we came for. Now we use it." Eliza lowered her hands. Her eyes were red, but her jaw was set. "You're right. No more running. We take this to San Francisco. We find a newspaper that will print it, and we end this. That's the spirit." She looked down at the bundle in her lap, then back at him. "Why are you still here?" "What do you mean?" "You could have left. Back at the ranch when Tate came. You could have turned me in, taken the money, been done with it. Even now you could ride away. This isn't your fight." Caleb poked at the fire. "Maybe I'm just stubborn." "I'm serious." He met her eyes. "So am I. I don't leave people behind. I told you that. But why? What do I matter to you? The question hung in the air between them. Caleb thought about all the ways he could answer it, all the careful, safe things he could say. Instead, he told the truth. But just because when I found you on that trail, you were dying. And instead of giving up, you asked me not to leave you. That took guts. More than most people have, and I figured anyone with that much fight in them deserves a chance to use it. Eliza stared at him. Then, very quietly, she said, "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this." "I know, but still," she paused. "When this is over, if we survive, will you go back to Pine Hollow?" "That's the plan." "Alone?" He looked at her. "I don't know. Will I?" She held his gaze. "I don't know either." But the way she said it, the way she looked at him, told a different story. They sat in silence after that, watching the fire burn down. And when they finally slept, it was back to back, the way soldiers sleep when they trust each other to keep watch over the dark. The second day toward San Francisco, they ran into a problem. A river swollen from recent rain, cutting straight across their path. No bridge, no ferry, just fast water and no way around for miles. "We'll have to swim it," Caleb said. Eliza looked at the current. "The horses won't make it." "They'll make it if we help them." They stripped the saddles, bundled everything tight, wrapped the documents in oilcloth and tied them to Eliza's back. Then they led the horses into the water. It was worse than the creek. The current grabbed them immediately, pulling hard. Caleb's gelding panicked, thrashing, and for a moment he thought they'd lose it. But he held on, talking to the horse, pulling it forward, and finally its hooves hit bottom on the far side. Eliza wasn't so lucky. Her horse lost its footing halfway across. It went under, and Eliza went with it. Caleb saw her surface, gasping, the current dragging her downstream. He didn't think, just dove back in. The water was freezing, the current like a fist. He swam hard, angling downstream, and caught her just before she went under a tangle of fallen trees. Grabbed her coat, pulled her up. "I've got you!" She coughed, choking on river water. He kicked hard, towing her toward the bank. His boots hit mud, and he dragged them both onto shore, collapsing in the shallows. "The documents!" Eliza gasped, still tied to her back. Soaked through, but there. "Your horse?" She looked downstream. The animal had made it out farther down, was standing on the bank, shaking itself off. "It's okay," Caleb said. "We're okay." But they weren't okay. They were freezing, exhausted, and still 2 days from San Francisco. And somewhere behind them, Hale's men were coming. They built a fire, dried out as best they could. The documents were wet, but the oilcloth had held enough that the ink was still readable. Barely. "We need to move faster," Eliza said through chattering teeth. "Can't. Horses need rest." "Then we'll have to risk the main road." "Too dangerous." "Caleb, if we don't reach San Francisco before those papers fall apart, this was all for nothing." He knew she was right, hated it, but knew it. "All right," he said. "Main road. But we keep moving after dark. And if we see anyone, we hide, I know." They rode through the night, taking turns sleeping in the saddle. Dawn found them on the outskirts of a small town called Fairfield. They stopped at a general store, bought bread and cheese, and asked about the road to San Francisco. "Another day's ride," the shopkeeper said. "Maybe less if you push." They pushed. By evening of the third day, they saw it. The bay. The city sprawled along the water, bigger than Sacramento, a forest of masts in the harbor and buildings climbing the hills. "We made it," Eliza said. She sounded like she couldn't quite believe it. "Now comes the hard part," Caleb said. They found a boarding house on the edge of town, paid for a room, stabled the horses. Inside, Eliza spread the documents out to finish drying while Caleb kept watch at the window. "Tomorrow," she said, "we find a newspaper. We tell them everything, and we hope they listen. What if they don't? Then we find another one, and another, until someone does." Caleb looked at her. 3 weeks ago, she'd been beaten and left to die. Now she sat in a rented room in a strange city, planning to take on one of the most powerful men in California. "You're something else," he said. "Is that a compliment?" "Yeah, it is." She smiled, tired but genuine. "Coming from you, I'll take it." That night, they took turns on watch again. Caleb had the second shift. He sat by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the street. Fog rolled in from the bay, thick and gray, swallowing the city block by block. Around 3 in the morning, he saw them. 2 men, moving slow, checking doorways. They stopped in front of the boarding house, looked up at the windows. Caleb's hand tightened on the rifle. One of the men said something to the other. They moved on. But Caleb didn't relax, because he knew with a cold certainty that Hale's reach extended even here. They'd been found. When morning came, he told Eliza. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Not long. We need to move now." She gathered the documents and they slipped out the back of the boarding house, leaving the horses behind. Too conspicuous. They moved on foot through the foggy streets, Eliza leading. "There," she said, pointing to a building with a sign that read Chronicle. "That's the biggest paper in the city." They climbed the steps, pushed through the door. Inside, a receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" "We need to see an editor," Eliza said. "It's urgent." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but then you'll have to come back." Caleb stepped forward. "We have evidence of a crime, a major one. People have died. If you don't let us speak to someone, more people will die, including us. So get us an editor, now." The receptionist's eyes widened. She stood, disappeared through a door. A moment later, a man emerged, middle-aged, ink-stained fingers, skeptical eyes. "I'm Arthur Mills, assistant editor. You have 1 minute." "Have one." Eliza unwrapped the documents, spread them on the desk. "My name is Eliza Rowan. I worked at California Mercantile Bank in Sacramento. These are ledgers proving embezzlement, fraud, and murder. The man responsible is Victor Hale. He killed my colleague to cover it up and framed me for the crime. I need you to print this. I need you to expose him." Mills looked at the papers, picked one up, read it. His expression changed. "Where did you get these?" "I copied them before he knew I'd found out." "And you're wanted for murder?" "Yes, but I didn't do it. Hale did. Or had someone do it for him?" Mills was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at Caleb. "Who are you?" "Someone who believes her." Mills set the paper down. If this is real, this is the biggest story of the year. But if it's not, if you're lying, my career is over. And probably my life." "It's real," Eliza said. "I swear it." "Swearing isn't proof." "Then verify it. Check the accounts, match the signatures. It's all there." Mills hesitated. Then he nodded. "All right, give me 2 days. I'll investigate. If it checks out, we'll run it." "We don't have 2 days," Caleb said. "Hale's men are in the city. They're looking for us right now." "Then I suggest you find somewhere to hide, because I'm not printing a word until I know this is solid." Eliza looked like she wanted to argue, but Caleb touched her arm. "He's right. We'll wait. Just do it fast." Mills nodded. "Come back tomorrow. I'll have an answer by then." They left the building, stepped into the fog, and immediately Caleb saw them. 3 men, across the street, watching. "Walk," he said quietly to Eliza. "Don't run. Not yet." They walked. The men followed. Caleb took Eliza's hand, turned down an alley. The men turned too. "Now run." They ran. Through alleys, over fences, between buildings. The men stayed with them, shouting. Caleb heard a gunshot, brick chips exploding near his head. They burst onto a market street, crowded and loud, ducked into the crowd, weaving through. Behind them, the men pushed through, but the crowd slowed them. Caleb pulled Eliza into a butcher shop, through the back, out into another alley. They kept moving, turning randomly until finally they lost the pursuit. They ended up on the waterfront, hiding behind stacked crates, gasping for breath. "This isn't going to work," Eliza said. "Even if Mills prints the story, we'll be dead before anyone reads it." Caleb knew she was right, but he didn't know what else to do. Then he saw it. A ship at the dock, passengers boarding. "Come on," he said. "Where?" "Trust me." They boarded the ship, paid for passage with the last of Caleb's money. It was heading up the coast, away from San Francisco, away from Hale. "We'll come back tomorrow," Caleb said as the ship pulled away from the dock. "Get Mills's answer. Until then, we stay moving." Eliza leaned against the rail, watching the city recede into the fog. "I'm tired of running." I know. I want to stand and fight. Tomorrow. We'll get our chance. She looked at him. Promise? Promise. And as the ship carried them out into the bay, away from danger but also away from hope, Caleb wondered if he could keep that promise, or if they'd just traded one trap for another. The ship docked in a fishing village 20 miles up the coast just before sunset. Caleb and Eliza disembarked with a handful of other passengers, moving quickly through the small crowd on the wharf. The smell of salt and fish guts hung heavy in the air, and gulls wheeled overhead, screaming. "We can't stay here," Eliza said, pulling her coat tighter. "It's too small, too exposed." "We're not staying, just need horses." They found a stable at the edge of the village, bought 2 horses with what little money Caleb had left after the ship passage. The stable owner looked at them with suspicion, but took the cash without questions. Within the hour, they were riding back toward San Francisco, taking the coast road this time, staying off the main routes. The night came on cold and moonless. They rode in silence, both too exhausted to talk. Caleb's mind kept circling back to the same problem. Even if Mills printed the story, even if people believed it, what then? Hale had lawyers. He had connections. Men like him didn't go down easy, and they sure as hell didn't go down just because some newspaper said they should. Around midnight, they stopped to rest the horses. Eliza slid from the saddle, nearly collapsed, and Caleb caught her. "You need sleep," he said. "We both do." "I'll take first watch." No, we both sleep, just for a few hours. The horses will warn us if anyone comes." He wanted to argue, but she was right. They were no good to anyone dead on their feet. They found a sheltered spot behind a stand of cypress trees, spread their bedrolls close together for warmth, and lay down. Caleb meant to stay awake, meant to keep watch despite what he'd agreed to. But exhaustion pulled him under within minutes, and he fell into a black, dreamless sleep. He woke to Eliza shaking his shoulder. "Someone's coming," she whispered. He sat up fast, reaching for his rifle. Dawn was just breaking, gray light filtering through the trees. He could hear it now. Horses. Multiple riders, coming from the south. "How many?" he asked quietly. "I count 4. They moved quickly, rolling up their bedrolls, saddling the horses. Caleb peered through the trees. 4 riders, like Eliza said, moving at a steady pace. Not searching, just traveling. Could be innocent. Could be Hale's men. "We can't risk it," Eliza said, reading his thoughts. "No, we can't." They mounted and rode north, staying in the trees, parallel to the road but out of sight. Behind them, the riders passed without stopping. But Caleb's gut told him they'd been lucky. Next time, they might not be. They reached the outskirts of San Francisco by mid-morning. The city looked different in daylight, bigger, louder, more chaotic. They left the horses at a different stable this time, paid a boy to watch them, and made their way on foot toward the Chronicle building. Caleb kept scanning the crowds, looking for faces that didn't fit, men who watched too carefully. He saw plenty of both. Or maybe he was just seeing threats everywhere now. "There," Eliza said, pointing. The Chronicle building stood 3 stories tall, windows reflecting the morning sun. They approached cautiously, watching for anyone who might be watching them. The street seemed clear. Inside, the same receptionist looked up. Her eyes widened when she saw them. "Mr. Mills said to send you straight up if you came back," she said quickly. "3rd floor, last door on the right." They climbed the stairs, boots echoing on wood. Caleb kept one hand on his pistol. The 3rd floor hallway was empty, lined with doors. They found the last one, knocked. "Come in," Mills's voice called. They entered. Mills sat behind a desk buried in papers, and he wasn't alone. 2 other men stood in the room. One young, maybe 25, with ink-stained hands and sharp eyes. The other older, gray-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Caleb made in a year. Mills stood. "Miss Rowan, Mr. Mercer, this is Thomas Webb, my senior reporter, and James Hartley, our publisher." Hartley studied them with the kind of look that stripped away pretense. "Sit down," he said. Not a request. They sat. "We verified your documents," Mills said, "as much as we could in one day. The ledger entries matched the bank's format. The signatures appeared genuine. We contacted several of the account holders listed. 3 of them confirmed they never authorized the transfers. 1 threatened to sue us." "So you believe me," Eliza said. "We believe the documents are real," Hartley said. That doesn't mean we're printing this. Eliza leaned forward. Why not? Because Victor Hale is one of the most powerful men in California. Because he'll sue us into oblivion. Because half our advertisers do business with his bank. Because printing this story could destroy this newspaper. He paused. I need to know if you're prepared for what happens next. Because once we run this, there's no taking it back. For any of us. I'm prepared, Eliza said. Are you? Because they've already tried to kill you once. They'll try again, and this time they won't stop until you're dead. Let them try. Hartley looked at Caleb. What about you? You're the rancher. This isn't your fight. Why are you still here? Caleb met his eyes. Because someone has to stand with her. Might as well be me. Noble. Stupid, but noble. Hartley turned to Mills. How long to prepare the story? 2 days. Maybe less if we work through the night. Then do it, but keep it quiet. No one outside this room knows until it goes to press. He looked back at Eliza and Caleb. You two. You stay out of sight, find a safe place, and don't move until this runs. Once it's public, you'll have a chance. Until then, you're just targets. Where do we go? Eliza asked. Webb spoke for the first time. I know a place. Boarding house on the edge of Chinatown. The owner's a friend. She'll keep you hidden. Caleb didn't like it. Didn't like trusting people he didn't know, but they were out of options. All right, he said. Webb led them out through a back entrance, down an alley, through streets that got narrower and more crowded the farther they went. The buildings here pressed close together, washing hanging between them, the smell of cooking and incense thick in the air. People spoke languages Caleb didn't recognize, looked at them with expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Webb stopped at a narrow door painted red, knocked 3 times, paused, knocked twice more. An old woman opened it. She looked Webb up and down, then at Caleb and Eliza. Said something in Chinese. Webb responded in the same language. Caleb raised his eyebrows, surprised. The woman nodded, stepped aside. Webb gestured for them to enter. Inside was clean but sparse. A narrow staircase led up. The woman said something else and Webb translated. She says there's a room on the 3rd floor. Back window faces an alley. Keep the curtains closed. Don't leave. She'll bring food. How long? Caleb asked. 2 days? Maybe less. I'll come get you when it's time. He left. The old woman led them upstairs without a word, showed them to a small room with 2 beds, a washstand, and 1 window. She pointed at the curtains, made a closing gesture with her hands, and left. Caleb checked the window. The alley below was empty except for trash and a sleeping dog. Not much of an escape route, but it would have to do. 2 days, Eliza said, sitting on one of the beds. We can last 2 days. We'd better. They settled in to wait. The first day passed like pulling teeth. Slow. Painful. Nothing to do but sit and think, and thinking led to worrying, which led to imagining all the ways this could go wrong. Caleb cleaned his rifle twice, checked his ammunition, watched the alley. Eliza paced, then sat, then paced again. The old woman brought food at noon and again at dusk. Rice, vegetables, fish Caleb couldn't identify. It was good, though. Better than anything he'd had in weeks. That night, lying in the dark, Eliza spoke. Do you think it'll work? The story? All of it. The newspaper, the evidence, exposing Hale. Do you think it'll actually change anything? Caleb thought about that. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe he'll just pay his way out of it and everything stays the same. Then why are we doing this? Because it's the right thing to do. And because doing nothing guarantees he wins. She was quiet for a while. Then, I keep thinking about Thomas, about what he'd say if he could see us now, hiding in a boarding house in Chinatown, waiting for a newspaper to save us. He'd probably say you were crazy. Probably. But he'd also say it was worth trying. She paused. I miss him. I know that sounds strange. We weren't even that close, just colleagues. But he believed me when no one else did. He helped me when it would have been easier to look the other way. That meant something. It meant a lot. He was a good man. He was. And Hale killed him for it. Just erased him. Like he didn't matter. He mattered. That's why we're here. Eliza turned toward him in the dark. When this is over, if we survive, what will you do? Go home, back to Pine Hollow. Fix the fences I left half done, check the cattle, sleep in my own bed. Just like that? Just like that. What about you? She didn't answer right away. I don't know. I don't have a home anymore. Don't have a job. Don't have anything, really, except a wanted poster with my face on it. Even if Hale goes down, I'll still be... You'll still be the woman who exposed him, the woman who fought back. That counts for something. Does it? Yeah, it does. Another silence. Then Eliza said very quietly, You told me Pine Hollow could be my home. Did you mean that? Caleb's breath caught. Yeah, I meant it. Why? He could have deflected, could have made a joke, could have pretended not to understand what she was really asking. But they'd been through too much for that. Because you fit there, he said. I don't know how else to explain it. You just fit. He heard her breath hitch, then the rustle of blankets. Then her hand found his in the dark, and she held on tight. If we live through this, she said, I'd like to see if you're right. Deal. They fell asleep that way, hands clasped, and for the first time in weeks, Caleb's dreams weren't filled with gunfire and running. The second day started with shouting in the street below. Caleb jerked awake, grabbed his rifle, moved to the window, pulled the curtain back just enough to see. A crowd had gathered in the alley. Chinese men, arguing, gesturing. One of them pointed up at the building. What is it? Eliza whispered, joining him. I don't know, but I don't like it. The crowd dispersed after a few minutes, but the damage was done. They'd been noticed. Someone had seen them. An hour later, the old woman came up with food, but also with urgency in her movements. She said something rapid-fire, gesturing toward the door. I don't understand, Eliza said. The woman made a shooing motion. Leave. Go. Now. I think she's saying we're not safe here anymore, Caleb said. The woman nodded vigorously, said something else, pointed at the window. Caleb looked out. At the mouth of the alley, two men in suits had appeared. They weren't Chinese, they didn't belong here, and they were scanning the buildings. We need to move, he said. They grabbed their things, followed the old woman downstairs. She led them through the back of the house into another alley, then through a door into what looked like a kitchen. A man working there didn't even look up. She kept going through another door, down steps, into a tunnel under the street. It was dark, lit only by the dim light filtering from above through grates. The smell was awful, sewage and rot and damp earth, but the old woman moved through it like she'd done this 100 times, and they followed. They emerged 10 minutes later in the basement of another building. The woman pointed up, said one word Caleb understood. Go. Thank you, Eliza said. The woman just nodded and disappeared back into the tunnel. Caleb and Eliza climbed the stairs, found themselves in an empty warehouse. Crates stacked to the ceiling, dust everywhere. They made their way to a window, looked out, different street, waterfront, ships visible in the distance. Where are we? Eliza asked. No idea, but we're not at the boarding house, and that's what matters. They found a corner behind some crates, sat down to catch their breath. Caleb's mind raced. Webb had said 2 days. It had been almost that. But if Hale's men had found the boarding house, they might have found Webb, might have found the newspaper. We need to get to the Chronicle, he said. It's not safe. Nowhere's safe. But that's where the story is. That's our only shot. Eliza nodded slowly. You're right. Let's go. They slipped out of the warehouse into the street. It was busier here. Workers loading and unloading ships, merchants shouting prices. They blended into the crowd, moving fast but not running. Caleb spotted them half a block from the Chronicle building. 4 men, standing at the entrance, watching everyone who went in or out. Back way, Eliza said. They circled around, found the alley Webb had led them through before. The back door was unlocked. They slipped inside, climbed the stairs. 3rd floor, Mill's office. Caleb knocked. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked. Mills! He called. Nothing. Something's wrong, Eliza said. Caleb kicked the door. It splintered but held. He kicked again, and it burst open. The office was empty, papers scattered everywhere, desk overturned, blood on the floor, not much, just a few drops. But enough. They got to them, Eliza whispered. Caleb's jaw tightened. He moved through the office, searching, found a newspaper proof on the floor, stepped on and torn, picked it up. The headline was still visible. Embezzlement Scandal Rocks California Mercantile Bank. Below it, the beginning of the story. Names, figures, everything they'd given Mills. They were ready to print, Caleb said. Almost had it. And Hale stopped them. Looks like. Eliza sank into a chair, the fight going out of her. It's over. We lost. Not yet. Caleb, they took Mills. Probably Webb and Hartley, too. They destroyed the story. What else is there? Caleb looked at the torn proof in his hands, then at the scattered papers. An idea formed. Crazy. Dangerous. But possibly the only chance they had left. We print it ourselves, he said. What? The presses are downstairs. We print the story ourselves. Get it out before Hale can stop us. Do you know how to run a printing press? No, do you? No. Then we'll figure it out. Eliza stared at him. Then, incredibly, she laughed. You're insane. Probably. You coming? She stood up. Yeah, I'm coming. They found the press room on the first floor. Massive machines, metal and wood, ink and type. Caleb had seen printing presses before, but never operated one. He moved through the room, studying the equipment, trying to make sense of it. There, Eliza said, pointing. That's the typesetting area, and those are the plates. She moved to a cabinet, pulled out drawers of metal type, started sorting through them, comparing them to the torn proof. We can't set the whole story, she said. Not in time. But we can do the headline and the key points, enough to get the truth out. How long? Hours. Maybe more. I've never done this before. Then we'd better get started. They worked fast, Eliza setting type while Caleb figured out the press itself. It took trial and error. A lot of error. The first test print came out backwards. The second was too faint to read. The third smudged so badly it was illegible. But the fourth worked. Not perfect. The letters were uneven, some words crooked. But it was readable. The headline, the names, the accusation, all of it. We did it, Eliza breathed. Now we print copies, as many as we can. They fed paper into the press, cranked the wheel, pulled sheet after sheet. Caleb's arms burned, sweat ran down his back. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. They had maybe 300 copies when they heard the front door crash open. Footsteps. Multiple people. Voices shouting. Keep printing, Caleb said, grabbing his rifle. Caleb, do it! He moved to the doorway, peered into the hall. 5 men, armed, led by someone Caleb recognized from the cathedral. Victor Hale himself. I know you're here, Hale called. His voice echoed through the building. You're only making this worse for yourselves. Come out. We'll talk. Caleb didn't answer. Behind him, the press kept clanking, Eliza still working. I'm a reasonable man, Hale continued. You want money? I'll pay you. You want safe passage out of California? I'll arrange it. Just give me the documents and walk away. No one else has to die. The press went silent. Eliza appeared beside Caleb, her hands black with ink. Do you believe him? She whispered. Not a word. Me neither. She handed him a stack of printed pages. These need to get out. People need to see them. How? The window. There's a street below. We throw them out. The wind will scatter them. Someone will read them. It was a terrible plan, but Caleb couldn't think of a better one. Do it, he said. I'll buy you time. He stepped into the hallway, rifle raised. Hale stood 20 feet away, flanked by his men. When he saw Caleb, he smiled. The rancher, I wondered if you'd show your face. He gestured to his men. Lower your weapons. Let's be civilized. You killed Thomas Collier, Caleb said. You framed Eliza. You beat her and left her to die. Don't talk to me about civilized. Business, Mr. Mercer. Nothing personal. Everything's personal. Hale's smile faded. You're protecting a woman you barely know. Why? What is she to you? Someone worth protecting. Nobility. How quaint. It won't save you. Maybe not, but it'll slow you down. Behind him, Caleb heard the window shatter, papers rustling, Eliza throwing the printed pages out into the street. Hale heard it too. His eyes widened. Stop her! His men rushed forward. Caleb fired. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. One of Hale's men went down,
grabbing his leg. The others dove for cover. "Go!" Caleb shouted to Eliza.
More shots. Return fire from Hale's men. Bullets tore through the walls, splintered wood. Caleb dropped behind a desk, fired again. Heard someone scream. Then Eliza was beside him, breathing hard. "It's done. They're all out." "Then we run." They bolted for the back stairs. Behind them, footsteps pounded, voices shouting. They hit the alley at a dead run, turned toward the waterfront, and ran straight into more of Hale's men, 3 of them, blocking the alley, guns drawn. Caleb skidded to a stop. Eliza crashed into him. They were trapped. Men behind, men ahead. "Drop the rifle," one of the men said. Caleb's mind raced. No way out. No cover. Just brick walls and armed men and the certainty of death. Then the church bells started ringing. Not one church. All of them. Every bell in the city, it seemed like, ringing at once. The sound was massive, overwhelming, and in the confusion, people started flooding into the streets. Workers from the docks, shopkeepers, pedestrians, all looking around, wondering what was happening. And mixed in with them, Caleb saw something else. People holding papers. The pages he and Eliza had thrown from the window, reading them, passing them to others. The truth was spreading. Hale's men hesitated, looking at the growing crowd. That moment of hesitation was all Caleb needed. "Go!" he shouted, grabbing Eliza's hand. They plunged into the crowd. The men tried to follow, but the press of bodies slowed them. Caleb and Eliza pushed through, using the chaos as cover. They broke free on the far side, ran toward the docks. Behind them, shouts. Gunfire, but distant now, fading. They reached the waterfront, found a ship preparing to cast off. Caleb threw money at the captain. "2 passengers, leaving now." "We're full." "Please," Eliza said. "Please, they'll kill us." The captain looked at them, at the blood on Caleb's sleeve, at the desperation in Eliza's eyes. He nodded. "Get on, quick." They scrambled aboard. The gangplank lifted. The ship pulled away from the dock. On the shore, Hale's men appeared. Too late. The ship was already moving into the bay. Caleb and Eliza stood at the rail, watching the city recede. Behind them, chaos. Ahead, open water. "We did it," Eliza said. She sounded dazed. "We actually did it." "Maybe. We'll see." The ship turned north, following the coast. And in San Francisco, the pages they'd printed blew through the streets, passed from hand to hand, read by hundreds, then thousands. The story spread like fire, and Victor Hale, standing in the wreckage of the Chronicle building, knew his empire was beginning to crumble. The ship docked in Eureka 3 days later, and Caleb and Eliza stepped onto solid ground with no plan beyond survival. They had $17 between them, the clothes on their backs, and no idea whether the story they'd printed had done anything at all. For all they knew, Hale had already crushed it, bought off whoever needed buying, and was hunting them with every resource he had. They found a cheap hotel near the lumber mills, paid for one night, and collapsed into sleep that felt more like unconsciousness. When Caleb woke, it was dark outside and Eliza was sitting by the window, staring out at the street. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Can't stop thinking." "About what?" "About whether it was enough. Those pages we threw. The people who read them. What if Hale just pays everyone off? What if it all just disappears?" Caleb sat up, rubbed his face. His shoulder ached where he'd been grazed by a bullet back in Sacramento, though he hadn't told Eliza about it. "Then we tried. That's more than most people do. I'm tired of trying being good enough. What else is there?" She didn't answer, just kept staring out the window. The next morning, they walked to the general store to buy supplies with what little money they had left. The clerk behind the counter was reading a newspaper. When he saw them, his eyes widened. "You're her," he said, staring at Eliza. "You're the woman from the story." Caleb's hand went to his gun. "What story?" The clerk fumbled with the newspaper, turned it around so they could see. Front page. A headline in bold type. "Banking empire collapses amid fraud allegations." Below it, a photograph. Not of Eliza, but of Victor Hale, being escorted from his office by 2 federal marshals. Eliza grabbed the paper, read it with shaking hands. Caleb read over her shoulder. The story had spread. Not just San Francisco, but Sacramento, Stockton, even reaching newspapers in Oregon. The documents Eliza and Caleb had printed hadn't disappeared. People had read them. Journalists had investigated. Federal authorities had gotten involved. Within 48 hours of those pages hitting the streets, California Mercantile Bank had been shut down pending investigation. Hale had been arrested. His partners were being rounded up. And buried near the end of the article, one paragraph that made Eliza's breath catch. The murder charges against Eliza Rowan, former bank employee who first uncovered the fraud, have been dropped. Authorities now believe she was framed as part of the cover-up. Miss Rowan's whereabouts are currently unknown. She set the paper down, hands trembling. They dropped the charges. Yeah. I'm not wanted anymore. No, you're not. She looked at him, eyes bright with something between disbelief and hope. It's over. It's actually over. The clerk cleared his throat. There's a reward, you know, $500 for information about where you are. Federal authorities want to talk to you. Get your testimony. She'll talk to them when she's ready, Caleb said, his voice harder than he meant it. I didn't mean nothing by it. Just thought you should know. The clerk paused. You're heroes. People are saying you took down the most powerful man in California. That's something. Eliza's laugh came out bitter. We just barely survived. That doesn't make us heroes. Maybe not, but you did what nobody else would. That counts. They bought their supplies and left. Outside, Eliza stopped on the sidewalk, staring at nothing. What now? She asked quietly. What do you want to do? I don't know. I spent so long just trying to stay alive, I never thought about what comes after. You could go back to Sacramento. Give your testimony. Make sure Hale goes to prison. I could. Or you could come back to Pine Hollow with me. She turned to look at him. Is that what you want? I wouldn't have offered if it wasn't. But what would I do there? I'm not a rancher. I don't know anything about cattle or land or any of it. You'd figure it out. You're good with numbers. Ranch needs someone who can keep the books. And anyway, it's not about what you know. It's about having somewhere to be, somewhere that's yours. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Can we wait? Before we decide? Just take a few days to breathe before we figure out what's next? Yeah, we can wait. They stayed in Eureka for a week. Caleb found work at the lumber mill, hauling logs, and Eliza took a job at a boarding house, cooking and cleaning. It wasn't much, but it was enough to earn some money and give them both time to think. On the 5th day, a federal marshal arrived in town asking questions. Word got back to Caleb through the mill foreman. Man's looking for a woman named Eliza Rowan, the foreman said. Says it's official business. Not trouble, just wants to talk. Caleb found Eliza at the boarding house, told her. I should talk to him, she said. Get it over with. You sure? No, but it needs to be done. They met the marshal at his hotel. He was younger than Caleb expected, maybe 30, with tired eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Miss Rowan, he said, standing when they entered. I'm Marshal Raymond Cooper. I've been looking for you. I know. I'm here. Good. I need your testimony. Everything you know about Victor Hale, the embezzlement scheme, the murder of Thomas Collier. Will you give it? Yes. It'll mean going back to Sacramento, testifying in court, facing Hale's lawyers. They'll try to discredit you, tear you apart on the stand. It won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. Cooper nodded slowly. I believe that. For what it's worth, the evidence you uncovered has already led to 3 arrests besides Hale. We're dismantling the whole operation, but we need your testimony to make sure it sticks. When? Trial's set for 6 weeks from now. You'd need to be in Sacramento 2 weeks before to prepare. Eliza looked at Caleb. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been running for too long. I'll be there, she said. Cooper pulled out a piece of paper, wrote something on it. This is my address in Sacramento. Send word when you're coming, and I'll make sure you're protected. Hale still has allies. They might try something. They already have. Then you know to be careful. He handed her the paper, tipped his hat to Caleb. Mr. Mercer, take care of her. That's the plan. After Cooper left, Eliza sat down heavily. 6 weeks. That's not much time. Time for what? To figure out who I am when I'm not running. Caleb sat beside her. You're the same person you were before, just not scared anymore. I'm still scared, just of different things now. Like what? Like going back there, like facing him in a courtroom instead of running from him in the streets, like not being strong enough to do it. You're strong enough. You've already proven that. She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being. 2 weeks later, they took a stage south to Sacramento. The journey was long and dusty, and every mile brought back memories neither of them wanted. By the time they arrived, Eliza was pale and quiet, her hands gripping her bag so tight her knuckles were white. Marshal Cooper met them at the station with 2 deputies. "Miss Rowan, Mr. Mercer, welcome back."
"Doesn't feel much like a welcome," Eliza said. "No, I suppose not. Come on, we've got a safe house for you."
The safe house was a small apartment above a tailor's shop, guarded around the clock. It had 2 rooms, bars on the windows, and a view of the street below. Caleb hated it on sight. "How long do we stay here, Lisson?" he asked. "Until the trial. Can't risk Hale's people getting to her. So we're prisoners. You're protected. There's a difference." "Doesn't feel like one." Cooper left them with instructions not to go out, not to be seen, not to do anything that might compromise the case. The door locked behind him, and Caleb and Eliza were alone. "Well," Eliza said, looking around, "this is cozy. It's a cage. A safe cage. Still a cage." She sat on the bed, which creaked under her weight. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. If you want to leave, go back to Pine Hollow. I'd understand." "I'm not leaving." "Caleb, I said I'm not leaving, so stop trying to get rid of me." She smiled despite everything. "I'm not trying to get rid of you. I'm trying to give you an out." "Don't want one." "Why not?" He thought about that, about all the reasons he could give, about the words that would sound right. But in the end, the truth was simpler than all that. "Because I love you," he said. Eliza's breath caught. "What?" "You heard me. Caleb, you don't have to—" "I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true." He sat beside her. "I didn't plan on it, didn't expect it. But somewhere between finding you on that trail and standing with you in that cathedral, it happened, and I'm not taking it back." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." "Yes, I do." She took his hand. "I love you too. I think I have for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it." "Not scared anymore?" "Terrified, but I'm saying it anyway." He kissed her then, and she kissed him back. And for a moment the cage they were in didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this. When they finally pulled apart, Eliza was smiling through her tears. "What happens after the trial?" "We go home." "To Pine Hollow? If that's what you want." "It is. It really is." The weeks crawled by. Eliza met with prosecutors, went over her testimony 100 times, prepared for every question Hale's lawyers might ask. Caleb stayed with her through all of it, and at night they'd sit by the window and talk about the future they were building in their heads. A ranch, a life, something that belonged to them. The trial began on a hot Monday in September. The courthouse was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the aisles. Caleb sat in the gallery, watching as Eliza took the stand. She looked small up there, fragile. But when she started speaking, her voice was steady. She told them everything. The embezzlement scheme, the false accounts, Thomas Collier's murder, the beating on the trail, the wanted poster, running, fighting, refusing to stay buried. Hale's lawyers tried to break her, accused her of fabricating evidence, of having a personal vendetta, of being a scorned woman making up stories. But Eliza didn't break. Every question she answered calmly. Every accusation she refuted with facts. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witnesses testified. Documents were presented. The prosecution built their case brick by brick, and slowly, inexorably, Victor Hale's empire crumbled in front of everyone. On the final day, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the foreman stood. "We find the defendant, Victor Hale, guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. People shouting, crying, celebrating. Hale sat stone-faced as the judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison. His lawyers protested, demanded appeals, but it was over. Everyone knew it. Caleb found Eliza outside the courthouse. She was surrounded by reporters, all shouting questions. He pushed through the crowd, took her hand, and led her away. "You did it," he said when they were clear. "We did it. How do you feel?" She thought about that. Empty. I thought I'd feel, I don't know, triumphant, vindicated, but I just feel empty. That'll pass. Will it? Yeah, give it time. Marshall Cooper found them an hour later. Miss Rowan, there's been some discussion about compensation. What kind of compensation? The bank's assets are being liquidated, distributed to the victims of the fraud. There's also a reward from the state for your role in bringing Hale to justice. Combined, it comes to about $8,000. Eliza stared at him. $8,000? Yes, ma'am. It's yours if you want it. What if I don't? Cooper blinked. I'm sorry? What if I don't want the money? Then, I suppose it goes into the general fund. But, Miss Rowan, that's a lot of money. You could start a new life with it. I already have a new life. I don't need blood money to start it. Caleb looked at her, surprised. But he didn't argue. Cooper shook his head slowly. You're a rare one, Miss Rowan. All right, I'll make a note. But if you change your mind, I won't. Fair enough. He tipped his hat. Good luck to you both. After he left, Caleb said, You sure about that? $8,000 is a lot to walk away from. I'm sure. That money came from people Hale stole from. It should go back to them, not to me. Even if it means starting over with nothing? We don't have nothing. We have each other, and we have Pine Hollow. That's more than enough. Caleb pulled her close. Yeah, it is. They left Sacramento the next morning, riding out before dawn while the city still slept. Neither of them looked back. There was nothing there they wanted to remember. The ride to Pine Hollow took 4 days, and with every mile, Caleb felt something inside him unclenching. The tension he'd carried for months, the constant vigilance, the fear, all of it slowly draining away. By the time they crested the hill and saw the valley spread out below, he felt lighter than he had in years. The ranch looked exactly as he'd left it. The house, the barn, the corrals, all of it waiting. Home, Eliza said softly. Yeah, home. They rode down into the valley as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. The horses knew where they were going, picking up their pace, eager for familiar ground. Caleb dismounted in front of the house, helped Eliza down. She stood looking at the porch, the door, the window with the faded curtains. It's smaller than I remembered, she said. That a problem? No, it's perfect. They unsaddled the horses, turned them into the corral, carried their few belongings inside. The house smelled like dust and disuse, but it was still standing, still theirs. That night, they sat on the porch watching stars come out. Eliza leaned against Caleb, his arm around her, and for the first time since that day on the trail, she felt safe. What do we do now? She asked. Whatever we want. Fix up the place. Run some cattle. Build a life. Just like that? Just like that? Sounds too simple. Maybe it is, but simple doesn't mean easy. We'll have hard days. Times when money's tight, or the weather's bad, or we wonder if we made the right choice. But we'll have each other. That counts for something. It counts for everything. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Eliza said, Marry me. Caleb turned to look at her. What? Marry me. I know it's supposed to be the other way around, but I don't care. I want to marry you. Build this life with you. Make it official. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Caleb grinned, the first real smile in months. Then yeah, let's get married. When? Tomorrow, next week, whenever you want. How about Saturday? That gives us time to ride into town, get a license, find someone to do it. Saturday it is. They were married the following Saturday in a small church in Weaverville, with Marshall Cooper as one witness and the minister's wife as the other. Eliza wore a simple dress bought from the general store, and Caleb wore the only clean shirt he owned. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't grand, but when they said their vows, they meant every word. Afterward, they rode back to Pine Hollow as husband and wife, and Caleb carried Eliza over the threshold of a house that was now truly theirs. The first year was hard. They had almost no money, and the ranch needed work. Fences had to be mended. The roof leaked. The barn needed new boards. But they worked together, learning as they went, and slowly the place came back to life. Eliza proved better with the cattle than either of them expected. She had a calm way about her that the animals responded to, and she took to the work with the same determination she'd shown in everything else. Caleb taught her to ride better, to rope, to read the weather. She taught him to keep proper books, to plan ahead, to see the bigger picture. They fought sometimes. About money, about decisions, about stupid things that didn't matter. But they always came back to each other, always remembered what they'd survived to get here. By the second year, the ranch was turning a profit. Not much, but enough. They bought more cattle, hired a hand to help with the heavy work, started saving money. And then one morning in the spring of 1876, Eliza woke up sick. At first, Caleb thought it was something she ate. But when it kept happening, day after day, a different possibility occurred to him. "When was your last monthly?" he asked. Eliza thought about it. Her eyes widened. 2 months ago, maybe longer. They rode into town that afternoon, saw the doctor. He confirmed what they'd already guessed. Eliza was pregnant. They rode home in stunned silence. When they reached the ranch, Eliza dismounted and stood looking at the house, her hand on her belly. "A baby," she said. "We're going to have a baby." "Yeah. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know how to be a father. We'll figure it out together." She turned to him, and he saw fear in her eyes, but also hope. "What if I'm not good at it? You'll be great at it." "How do you know?" "Because you're great at everything you set your mind to, and because I'll be right there with you." She kissed him then, long and deep, and when they pulled apart, she was smiling through tears. "We're going to have a baby," she said again. "Yeah, we are." The baby came in December, a girl with dark hair and her mother's eyes. They named her Margaret, after the woman Caleb had almost married, because Eliza said that choice, that path not taken, had led him to where he needed to be. Holding his daughter for the first time, Caleb thought about the trail outside Weaverville. The choice he'd made to stop, to help, to stay. How easily it could have gone differently. How close they'd both come to dying. But they hadn't died. They'd fought. They'd survived. And now they had this. A family, a home, a future. Margaret grew into a fierce, strong-willed child who asked 1,000 questions and feared nothing. She learned to ride before she could read, helped with the cattle as soon as she was big enough, and had her mother's head for numbers and her father's stubbornness. When she was 5, she asked Eliza about the scar on her face, the faint line that ran along her jaw from the beating all those years ago. "How'd you get that, Mama?" Eliza looked at Caleb. He nodded. "I got it from bad men," she said. "Men who tried to hurt me because I found out they were doing wrong things." "What happened to them?" "Your father and I stopped them." "How?" "By being brave. And by not giving up." Margaret thought about that. "Were you scared?" "Yes, very scared." "But you did it anyway?" "Yes." "That's what brave means, right? Being scared but doing it anyway?" Eliza smiled. "That's exactly what it means." Margaret nodded, satisfied, and ran off to play. Eliza watched her go, this fierce little person they'd created, and felt something like peace settle over her. "She's going to be something," Caleb said. "She already is." Years passed. The ranch grew. They hired more hands, bought more land, built a bigger house. Other ranchers came to Caleb for advice, and Eliza became known as the woman who could make numbers dance. They were respected, successful. But more than that, they were happy. On their 10th anniversary, they rode back to the trail where Caleb had found her. The manzanita bush was still there, older now, gnarled by weather and time. They stood looking at the spot, remembering. "Sometimes I still dream about it," Eliza said, "lying there, thinking I was going to die." "What happens in the dream?" "You come, just like you did, and you saved me." "I didn't save you, you saved yourself." "No, we saved each other." Caleb took her hand. "Yeah, I guess we did." They stood there a while longer, then turned and rode home. Because that's what it was now. Not just Caleb's ranch, not just a place they lived, but home. Built on courage and kindness and the choice to stand when it would have been easier to walk away. And on that lonely trail where a woman had nearly died, where a rancher had stopped when he didn't have to, the wind blew through the dry grass and carried no memory of the blood that had been spilled there, only the future it had created. The years after Margaret's birth settled into a rhythm that felt almost too good to be real, and Caleb kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. It never did. The ranch prospered, their daughter grew strong and stubborn, and Eliza bloomed in ways that still surprised him. The woman who'd been beaten and left to die had become someone who walked through the world with her head up, unafraid. But the past had a way of reaching forward, even when you thought you'd buried it. It happened in the spring of 1881. Margaret was 5, helping Eliza hang laundry on the line behind the house. Caleb was in the barn shoeing a horse when he heard riders coming up the valley road. 3 of them. Moving at an easy pace, not hurried, not threatening, but something about the way they rode made his gut tighten. He set down the horse's hoof, grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the stall, and walked out to meet them. They reined in about 20 yards from the house, 2 men and a woman. The woman was young, maybe 22 or 23, with blonde hair tied back and the kind of tired eyes that said she'd seen too much. The men flanked her like guards. "Help you?" Caleb called. The woman dismounted. "Are you Caleb Mercer?" "Depends who's asking." "My name is Sarah Brennan. I'm looking for Eliza Rowan." She paused. "I was told she might be here." Caleb's grip tightened on the rifle. "Who told you that?" "A lawyer in Sacramento. I've been searching for her for 3 months." Eliza appeared on the porch, Margaret clinging to her skirt. When she saw the riders, her whole body went rigid. "Caleb," she called, "it's all right." He hoped he was telling the truth. He turned back to Sarah. "What do you want with her?" "I need her help." "With what?" Sarah looked past him to Eliza, and her voice cracked when she spoke. "I worked at Western Reserve Bank in Stockton. I found irregularities in the accounts. Embezzlement. When I reported it, they framed me for theft. I'm wanted. There's a warrant. And the men who did it, they're connected, powerful, just like Victor Hale was." The words hung in the air. Caleb watched Eliza's face go pale. "I heard what you did," Sarah continued, "how you fought back, how you exposed Hale. I thought maybe you could help me do the same." Eliza came down the steps slowly, Margaret still holding on to her. When she reached Sarah, she studied the younger woman with an expression Caleb couldn't quite read. "You want me to help you fight men with money and power," Eliza said quietly. "Yes. You want me to risk everything I've built, my family, my home, my safety. I know it's asking too much, but I don't have anyone else, and I can't keep running. I just can't." Eliza looked back at Caleb. He saw the conflict in her eyes, the memory of what she'd survived, the fear of going back into that fire, but also something else, recognition, because she'd been exactly where Sarah was standing now. "Mama?" Margaret said. "Who is this lady?" "Someone who needs help, sweetheart." "Are we going to help her?" Eliza knelt down, took her daughter's hands. "I don't know yet. Why don't you go inside with your father for a bit while I talk to her?" "But inside, now." Margaret knew that tone. She went. Caleb hesitated. "You too," Eliza said to him. "Eliza, please, I need to do this alone." He didn't like it, but he trusted her. He went inside, watched through the window as Eliza and Sarah talked. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. At one point, Sarah started crying. Eliza put a hand on her shoulder. When they finally finished, Sarah and her escorts mounted up and rode back down the valley road. Eliza stood watching them go, arms wrapped around herself. Caleb came out. "What'd you tell her?" "I told her no." "You did?" "Yes. I told her I couldn't help her, that I have a daughter now, a husband, a life, that I can't risk all of that to fight someone else's battle. And she understood. She thanked me anyway and left." Caleb waited. There was more. He could feel it. "She's going to try anyway," Eliza said quietly. "She's going to go to the authorities, bring what evidence she has, and hope it's enough. But it won't be. They'll bury her, just like they tried to bury me. And she'll either die or spend the rest of her life running. That's not your fault. Isn't it? I survived because someone helped me. You helped me. And now she's asking for the same thing, and I'm turning her away. You have a child to think about now. That changes things. Does it? Or is that just an excuse to stay safe?" Caleb didn't have an answer for that. That night, Eliza barely slept. Caleb felt her tossing beside him, heard her get up twice to check on Margaret, come back to bed only to lie awake staring at the ceiling. Finally, around 3 in the morning, she spoke. What if I taught her? Taught her what? How to fight. How I did it. What worked, what didn't. I could give her advice without actually going with her. That's something, isn't it? It's something, but it's not enough. Maybe not, but it's what you can give. She rolled toward him. Is that cowardice? Helping halfway? No, it's being smart, being a mother. There's no shame in that. Then why do I feel ashamed? He pulled her close. Because you're a good person. And good people struggle with choices like this. But that doesn't mean you're making the wrong one. She buried her face against his chest, and he felt her tears soak through his shirt. The next morning, Eliza rode out alone before dawn. She didn't tell Caleb where she was going, but he knew. When she came back that evening, her face was set in a way he recognized. Decision made. I'm going to help her, she said. Eliza, not all the way, but more than I said I would. I'm going to teach her what I know, help her gather evidence the right way, connect her with people who can amplify her story. And if it comes to it, I'll testify. I'll tell them what happened to me, show them the pattern, make it harder for them to dismiss her as crazy or lying. That could put you in danger again. I know. It could put Margaret in danger. Could. I know that too. But what kind of mother would I be if I taught my daughter that the right thing to do is turn your back when someone needs help? What kind of person? Caleb looked at her. At this woman who'd been through hell and come out the other side, who could have spent the rest of her life safe and quiet, but chose not to. You're sure about this? He asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Over the next 3 months, Sarah Brennan became a regular visitor to Pine Hollow Ranch. She'd ride up once a week, and Eliza would spend hours teaching her how to copy documents without being caught, how to identify the right people to trust, how to build a case that couldn't be ignored, how to protect yourself when powerful men wanted you gone. Caleb watched from a distance, helping where he could, but this was Eliza's fight to guide. Margaret didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. She saw her mother being strong, being brave, and she absorbed it like sunlight. Is Miss Sarah in trouble? She asked one night at dinner. Yes, Eliza said. Bad men are trying to hurt her. Like the bad men who hurt you? Yes, like that. Are you going to stop them? I'm going to try. Will you be okay? Eliza reached across the table, took her daughter's hand. I don't know, sweetheart, but I have to try anyway. Do you understand why? Margaret thought about it with the seriousness only a 5-year-old could muster. Because it's the right thing to do. Yes. Even if it's scary? Especially if it's scary. That's what being brave means. Margaret nodded, satisfied. And in that moment, Caleb saw the future taking shape. Not just in what Eliza was doing for Sarah, but in what she was teaching their daughter. That courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was doing what needed to be done despite it. Sarah's case broke open in August. With Eliza's guidance, she'd built an airtight record of the embezzlement scheme at Western Reserve Bank. She'd connected with a newspaper editor who believed her, who ran the story on the front page. Federal marshals got involved. Within 2 weeks, 3 bank officers were arrested. But unlike with Hale, the men behind this scheme were smarter. They hired better lawyers. They buried Sarah's accusations in paperwork and procedural challenges. The case stalled. That's when Eliza made a decision that terrified Caleb. I'm going to Sacramento, she said. I'm going to testify at the preliminary hearing. Put my story alongside Sarah's. Show them it's not an isolated incident. It's a pattern. They'll come after you. Maybe, but they can't silence me the way they could have 8 years ago. I'm not alone anymore. I have witnesses. I have you. I have a life they can't just erase. What if you're wrong? Then I'm wrong. But I'm not staying here wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. She left for Sacramento the next week. Caleb wanted to go with her, but someone had to stay with Margaret, run the ranch, keep things together. So he watched her ride away, rifle across her saddle, spine straight, and prayed to whatever powers might be listening that she'd come home safe. She was gone for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of Caleb barely sleeping, jumping at every sound, teaching Margaret how to use a rifle just in case. 2 weeks of waiting for a telegram saying something had gone wrong. The telegram that finally came said something different. Case moving forward. Stop. They believed me. Stop home. Soon. Stop love. Caleb read it 3 times before the words sank in. Then he picked up Margaret and spun her around until they were both dizzy. "Mama did it," Margaret squealed. "Yeah, baby. She did." Eliza came home a week later, thinner and exhausted, but with fire in her eyes. The preliminary hearing had gone well. The judge had allowed Sarah's case to proceed to trial. And more importantly, 2 other women had come forward with similar stories after reading about Eliza's testimony. The pattern was undeniable now.
"They can't hide from this," Eliza said that night, lying in bed beside Caleb. "Too many people know. Too many voices. They'll try to fight it, but they'll lose." "What about Sarah?" "She's strong. Stronger than I thought. She'll make it. Because you showed her how." Eliza was quiet for a moment. "You know what she said to me after the hearing?" "What?"
She said she used to think courage was something you either had or you didn't, like being tall or having blue eyes. But now she knows it's something you build, one choice at a time, one moment of standing when you could run. She's right.
"I know. And it made me realize something." She turned to look at him. "I spent so long thinking of myself as the woman who survived, the woman who got lucky because you found me. But that's not the whole story. I survived because I chose to, every day, even when it was hard, even when it would have been easier to give up. I could have told you that. I needed to learn it myself." She kissed him then, and they held each other in the dark. 2 people who'd built something real out of the wreckage of the worst day of their lives. The trial of the Western Reserve Bank officers took place in the fall of 1881. Sarah testified. Eliza testified. The other women testified. The evidence was overwhelming. By November, all 3 men were convicted. The bank collapsed. The stolen money was recovered and returned to the victims. Sarah Brennan came to Pine Hollow Ranch one last time after it was over. She looked different, lighter, like she'd put down a weight she'd been carrying. "I'm leaving California," she told Eliza. "Starting fresh somewhere new, maybe Oregon, maybe farther." "What will you do?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." She paused. "I wanted to thank you for everything. You saved my life." "No, you saved your own life. I just showed you the tools." "Is there a difference?" Eliza smiled. "Not really, but it's important you know you did this. You fought back. You won." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "If I ever have a daughter, I want her to be like you." "If you have a daughter, make sure she's like herself. That's more important." They embraced, and then Sarah rode away, heading north toward whatever future she'd build. Eliza watched her go, and Caleb came up beside her. "You did good," he said. "We did good. All of us. Think there'll be more? More women who need help?" "Probably. Men like Hale, like the ones who went after Sarah, they don't just stop. But maybe now there's a roadmap. A way to fight back that doesn't end with running forever or dying on a trail. And if someone else comes here asking for help?" Eliza thought about that. "Then we'll decide together, you, me, Margaret, as a family. Because that's what we are now. A family that stands for something." Margaret, who'd been listening from the porch, ran up to them. "What do we stand for, Mama?" Eliza picked her up. "For doing what's right, even when it's hard. For helping people who can't help themselves. For being brave when we're scared. And for always, always fighting back." "I like that," Margaret said. "Me too, baby. Me too." The seasons turned. Pine Hollow Ranch kept growing. They added more land, hired more hands, built a bigger barn. Margaret grew into a fierce, clever child who loved horses and hated sitting still. She learned to read from Eliza and to rope from Caleb, and by the time she was 8, she could outride most of the ranch hands. But more than that, she learned the lessons her parents taught without words. That courage was a choice, that standing up to power was possible, that kindness wasn't weakness and fear wasn't failure. Other families started settling in the valley, drawn by the prosperity and the reputation of the Mercers. A schoolhouse was built, a general store, a church that neither Caleb nor Eliza attended but helped fund anyway because the community needed it. The valley changed from empty land to something alive. And every year on the anniversary of the day Caleb had found Eliza on that trail, they'd ride back there together. Sometimes just the 2 of them, sometimes with Margaret. They'd stand in that spot and remember.
Do you ever wish it hadn't happened? Margaret asked once when she was 12, old enough to understand the full story. No, Eliza said without hesitation. But you almost died. I know, but if I hadn't almost died, I wouldn't have the life I have now. I wouldn't have your father. I wouldn't have you. Bad things happened, yes, terrible things, but they led to good things too. That's how life works sometimes. So the bad things were worth it? I wouldn't go that far, but I made them worth something. That's different. Margaret thought about that. When I grow up, I want to be like you. No, you don't. You want to be like yourself. Just make sure you're brave when it counts. I will. And she was. Years later, when Margaret was 23, she took over the management of Pine Hollow Ranch. She ran it with an iron will and a kind heart, expanding it into one of the most successful operations in Northern California. She married a school teacher named James, who loved her fire and never tried to dim it. They had 3 children, and Margaret told them the story of their grandmother, the woman who'd been left to die but chose to live instead. Caleb and Eliza grew old together. Not gracefully. Their bodies wore down from years of hard work, and they both moved slower than they once did. But they grew old together, which was all that mattered. On summer evenings, they'd sit on the porch and watch their grandchildren play in the yard, and Caleb would think about how close none of this had come to happening. What are you thinking about? Eliza asked one such evening. She was 60 now, her hair more silver than gold, lines around her eyes from years of squinting into the sun. About that day, on the trail. You always think about that day. Can't help it. My whole life changed right there. Mine too. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stopped? Sometimes, but not often. Wondering about the paths we didn't take is a waste of the path we did. That's very wise. I'm old. I'm allowed to be wise. He laughed, took her hand. Her fingers were rough and scarred from decades of ranch work, but they fit perfectly in his. I love you, he said. I know, you tell me every day. That's because it's true every day. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that as the sun set and the valley fell into shadow. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. A dog barked. Life continuing, the way it always did. Caleb died in the winter of 1903 in his sleep, with Eliza beside him. He was 72 years old and had lived a life he was proud of. The funeral brought people from 3 counties, all of them with stories about how Caleb Mercer had helped them when they needed it, stood up for them, been the kind of man you could count on. But it was Eliza who spoke the truth about him. My husband was not a complicated man, she said, standing at his grave with snow falling around her. He believed in simple things, doing what was right, keeping your word, standing with people who couldn't stand alone. He lived those beliefs every day of his life, and he taught them to everyone who knew him, including me. She paused, looking down at the coffin. He saved my life when he didn't have to. And in doing that, he showed me that one person's choice to act, to care, to refuse to walk away can change everything. That's his legacy. Not the ranch, not the land, not even the family we built. It's the reminder that kindness is power, that courage is a choice, that love is action. She scattered dirt on the coffin. Rest easy, Caleb. You earned it. Eliza lived another 15 years. She watched her grandchildren grow, saw her great-grandchildren born. She stayed at Pine Hollow until the end, refusing to move to town even when her daughter begged her to. This was her home, the place she'd chosen, the life she'd built. She died on a warm afternoon in July 1918, sitting in her chair on the porch, looking out at the valley. Margaret found her there, peaceful, a slight smile on her face. On the table beside her was a letter she'd been writing. The last lines read, I was given a second chance on a dusty trail in 1873. I've spent every day since trying to be worthy of it. Not by being perfect. I've never been that. But by choosing courage when it would have been easier to choose fear. By standing when I could have run. By building instead of hiding. I hope I've done enough. I think I have. They buried her next to Caleb, and the whole valley came to mourn. But they also came to celebrate, because Eliza Rowan Mercer hadn't just survived. She'd lived, fully, bravely, on her own terms. And the ranch she and Caleb had built continued, generation after generation, each one carrying forward the lessons learned on that trail. That kindness met with courage could change the world. That one person's choice to stop, to help, to To refuse to accept cruelty as inevitable could ripple outward in ways they'd never see. Years after Eliza died, Margaret's granddaughter found something in the old house, a box hidden under the floorboards in what had been Eliza's room. Inside were the original documents from the California Mercantile Bank case, the ledgers, the letters, the evidence that had brought down Victor Hale, and beneath them, a journal. Eliza's handwriting, small and precise. The journal told the whole story. The fear, the pain, the moments when she'd wanted to give up, but also the moments when she'd found strength she didn't know she had. The people who'd helped her, the choices that had saved her. The final entry was dated a week before she died. I've been thinking about legacy lately, what we leave behind. I used to think it would be the ranch, or the family, or the memory of standing up to powerful men and winning, but now I know it's simpler than that. My legacy is every person who heard my story and found the courage to tell their own. Every woman who stood up when it would have been easier to stay down. Every man who chose kindness over cruelty. That's what lasts. Not monuments, not wealth. Just the idea that we can be better than our worst moments. That we can choose every single day to be brave. Bomachium. The journal was donated to the California Historical Society, where it remains today. And sometimes people read it and learn that on a lonely trail in 1873, a rancher made a choice that seemed small at the time. To stop, to help, to care. And that choice created a legacy that outlasted them all. Because in the end, that's what the story was about. Not revenge or triumph or even survival. It was about the choice to act when action isn't required. To care when caring costs something. To stand with someone who has nothing to offer in return except their humanity. On that trail, courage met kindness. And instead of ending a life, it created something that would echo for generations. A reminder that we are not powerless. That one person can make a difference. That the choice to help, to fight, to refuse to accept the world as it is and instead work for what it could be, that choice matters. It always has. It always will. And somewhere in Northern California, in a valley where cattle graze and children play, Pine Hollow Ranch still stands. A monument not to power or wealth, but to the simple truth that changed everything. When someone needs help, you don't walk away. You stop. You stand. You fight. And you build something better from the wreckage of what was. That's the legacy. That's the lesson. That's the story of Eliza Rowan and Caleb Mercer, two imperfect people who chose to be brave when it mattered most, and in doing so, showed the rest of us how.